goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Collington, joined by my fellow co-hosts and filmmakers, John and Elaine Woolscroft.
What up?
Hello, my pets. I missed you. Did you miss me?
John misses how you smell when you sleep.
Well, most of them.
So we're on episode, what are we on now?
15?
Holy shit, we're just flying.
One
through
more
these
episode
suckers.
and we can drive a car.
There you go.
Crushing
And a couple
it.
more, and then we'll get like a cut on our insurance rates.
Yeah, well, then we'll be able to drink.
Yeah,
And then-
there you go. We can rent a car soon after that.
And a house.
Well, that's episode
like a beach
25.
house. I know.
Yeah.
We're only 10 away.
So this
Closing
episode's gonna be a fun one because we don't really have anything set down and like
It's
our
like an
normal.
open world.
It's kind of an open one because it's kind of like when we talked about remakes.
Yeah.
This time we're going to the other end of the spectrum. We're talking about sequels.
Talking about sequels in an open format. So,
That
I
was
mean,
me
just...
singing, by the way.
You're playing towards that one guy who reviewed the thing and just wants to
No,
bang your
I
voice.
am not. I totally forgot about that.
You're
but
singing to him.
We appreciate all of our reviews. By the way, you guys are the best.
He needs to give another review, though. So,
He does.
yeah.
He does.
Only about Elaine's voice.
Anyway, this is an open format episode about sequels. So basically, it's the Grand Theft Auto of episodes, if you
Pretty
will.
much.
No real mission.
Yep, but we're going to talk first before we get to the Grand Theft Auto of episodes here. We're going to talk about some things that I can't stand. And it namely has to deal with corporations trying to put their thumb on creativity.
Some bullshit.
And I'm talking, of course,
That was a
about...
very genteel way of saying that.
It is, because I could just say, fuck them.
Yeah.
That's
or
my
you could have
typical.
said some bullshit.
I could have said some bullshit.
You were very eloquent.
Yeah.
Or bending over fans of the films and ramming them until
Yeah.
they pay.
Or
Yet
putting-
still expecting them to go see your movie.
Putting fans on the pinball machine of life.
Yes. And now, what am I? Now, you guys might be saying, what the hell are they talking about? Well,
What
I'm
are we
talking
ever talking
about
about?
a news piece that came out a couple weeks ago, and it's in relation to a lawsuit that's going on between CBS and Paramount, who own Star Trek, and a fan film called Axanar. And if anyone's been kind of doesn't know what the hell we're talking about, basically this independently run studio did a Kickstarter based on a short that they made called Prelude to Axanar. And they raised, I think it was $1 million.
What?
Yeah, they raised
That
close
is
to.
awesome.
They raised $1
I didn't know
million.
it was that much money. That is balls out.
And the thing is they had a lot of former Star Trek actors.
Oh.
Like, they had a lot of people who were either in Star Trek or what the
They've
hell?
probably come by cheaply now.
Like, they had Starbuck from the original Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, shit. That's awesome.
So it was filled with actual decent actors.
Nice.
People who were associated with Trek.
That's
They
so
had a
cool.
legitimate, people who worked in the business making this fan film.
But let me guess,
Okay.
Brian. Something went horribly wrong.
Yes, they did. Now I've heard that there are both sides to this thing. There's Paramount's point that this group was basically trying to use their money to fund an actual studio that would count as income, and that would count as being able to use money and use Star Trek's name to make more of these films for themselves for profit. That's kind of the whole premise of the lawsuit. But the whole thing that happened was, and the whole thing that is fucking over a lot of people who are creative but want to use, say, homages to fan films, you know? Is that CBS and Paramount came up with basically this arbitrary, and the police are coming for us.
It's about
They
time.
know too much.
Okay. They came up with this very strict, arbitrary list of guidelines that basically take any type of fan film idea you might have and put it within this square peg of a hole. And
basically, don't have any reference to Star Trek.
Yes,
and you'll be good.
You have to, like, just to give you an idea. Okay, one, the fan film being non-commercial. That's okay. I understand that. Just looking at here, the fan film must be less than 15 minutes for a single self-contained story. No more than 2 segments or episodes.
Even
must not
Roddenberry
exceed
couldn't do that.
must not exceed 30 minutes total, with no additional seasons, no episodes, parts, sequels, or remakes. Okay, that's one of the actual list here. Okay, if the fan production uses commercially available Star Trek uniforms, accessories, toys, props, these items must be official merchandise and not bootleg items or imitations of such commercially available products.
So wait, they want to make sure all of the stuff in the fan film is completely authentic,
but not actually call it a Star Trek movie.
So that
Well,
my brain hurts. Okay,
I can't
I'm
imagine
with
why
you.
that might be.
I mean, that's
cash registers.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what they're saying. And usually their props are pretty shitty. The toys that they make are shitty. That would be like using, like, no knock against Lucasfilm, but honestly, the quality of their toy lightsabers has gone downhill. You know, in the couple years.
Do you have like a sliding scale on which you grade this, Brian?
Yeah, I do. Okay, because I have one. I have a Darth Vader lightsaber. What did you say?
I said how well they fit.
Because he's an asshole. That was so rude.
I got a TIE fighter up my butt right now.
Why is anyone your friend?
Nobody is. It's okay. In fact, I just kind of wander on here with a gun, and you guys let me on the air.
Yes, the door was open. He just walked in. You know. But what I'm trying to say is that these guidelines are bullshit, and honestly, they're designed to discourage so many people from making fan films. Like, and the whole fear is that this can lead to, say, Lucasfilm coming out and saying, we're going to do this with Star Wars fan films.
Well, you know it's bad when Lucasfilm is the one that's more fucking lenient now.
That's sad.
It's really sad.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That was exactly what I was going to say. When George Lucas is the hero.
Yeah, when he's the hero of this story, something's wrong.
And this I'm going to read one more of these. I mean, we're going to put the whole list up with the show notes. But this one here is the one that actually I thought was almost the worst one. The fan production must be a quote-unquote real fan production, i.e. creators, actors, and all other participants must be amateurs, not compensated for their services, and cannot be currently or previously employed on any Star Trek series, films, production of DVDs with any of the CBS Paramount Pictures licensees. So basically what you're saying is, if you're in Hollywood and you happen to have a part-time freelance job working on a CBS show or on a Paramount movie, you cannot work on a fan film.
So it's like the Jimmy John's rule.
Yeah.
Where, like, if you work at a Jimmy John's, you can't work at any other Subway sandwiches.
Yes.
Anything
it's the
like
Jimmy
that.
John's rule.
You can't work at any hoagie establishment.
And the reason I hate this particular line is that you're basically saying that every fan film has to be a shitty, crappily made movie that's only 15...
With no resources.
With no resources at all.
No SAG actors, no nothing.
No SAG actors, no one.
If you're 10 years old and you get your dad's video camera, then go nuts.
Oh, yeah, it's fine.
Well, what I think is the most offensive about it, though, is say you do work for some, subset of CBS or Paramount, and your job isn't that fulfilling. There's tons of entertainment
There's a lot of
jobs
those.
that
What if
aren't
you're a
creative
PA?
at all.
What if you're a PA?
What if you're the fucking accountant? I mean, what if what you do has nothing to do with who you are? So basically, these companies are saying, like, okay, so you're going to put the grind in for our companies, but you don't get to go home and work for yourself if a Star Trek project is what you're passionate about.
It's not even if you're currently employed. It's currently or previously.
Yeah.
So if you got fired from CBS... Yeah. You still can't work on a fan film.
Sorry, Charlie Sheen.
And I bet by the same token, if you were to do something like that, CBS wouldn't hire you if you were involved in a project like that.
But that's what I'm saying, is it pretty much... And this basically goes after all of the maybe B-list or C-list actors and who worked on Axanar. Mm-hmm. That's who it's going after, okay? And it's just... It's complete and utter bullshit. And it is stomping on what I consider free speech. Listen, here's the thing.
Fair use, if nothing else.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, fair use, definitely. No one's making money off of this. And the way I kind of viewed it was that CBS and Paramount are so afraid of the fans coming up with anything that is better looking. Because if you saw the trailer for Axanar, they were like a million times better than anything that JJ has come up with for them. Like,
probably better than anything J.J. Abrams have ever come up with.
Okay, come
Except
on.
Felicity, how dare you?
Start. I liked the Force Awakens.
And I liked Alias, so suck it.
Okay.
well,
But my point is that this sounds more and more like CBS and Paramount are threatened by this. It's the same thing when actually I believe it was the foundation that kind of owns the rights to the Addams Family.
Oh, okay.
Went after the YouTuber who had Adult Wednesday Addams. They sued her. They tried to shut her down for copyright infringement.
Dude, those are really funny, though.
They're hilarious, and you could still find them on YouTube. By the way, they didn't get all of them. Melissa Hunter, that was her name.
And there's
gotcha.
satire, which falls under the purview of fair use, which you can still even monetize. But
Yes.
apparently, these studios don't get it.
I mean, like, it's under the law. Like,
It's-
fair use, as long as it's satire, in most cases.
Yes.
And I'm not a lawyer, but in most cases,
No, I'm not
it's
a lawyer
okay.
either. But
Or
the
a critical
Right.
look at something.
yeah, my problem is that this is another symptom of what I've heard of as called clearance culture. Okay, where basically you can't do anything unless you've got a piece of paper that says you have the rights to use it. And this has honestly become so pervasive. I went through this shit when I was making my documentary. Okay? Because when you're making a documentary, you guys know this, you pretty much are going to encounter copyright infringement. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
You
it's a
go watch your
documentary.
ass.
But I'm just
Absolutely.
saying, like, you're documenting real life. In real life, you're going to encounter things like music in the background, like a logo that pops up here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And those things are protected under fair use. But the problem is that you've got pieces of shit like CBS and Paramount who are banking on the fact that most fans don't have the resources to go ahead and battle them
Yeah.
in court. Because that's the thing, is fair use is considered a defense. It's not considered a offensive measure. Okay?
yeah.
You can't go ahead and re-sue CBS and Paramount and say, you guys falsely went ahead and said we were doing something that was clearly fair use. You can't do that, unfortunately. But it's just so fucked up. The way our copyright system is set up, it honestly, it makes it so that people who are small-time creative people cannot get a foothold on anything.
Because, I mean, people have been hired for really creative jobs on
Yeah.
less. I mean, people who write comedy blogs get hired on Conan just because they had a comedy blog. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it happens. You know,
Yeah.
something like this would be, and
I mean,
that's all we're ever told.
Jesus Christ, what we do is considered fair use.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, granted, you'll notice that in all of our podcast episodes, I never put any clips from the movies.
For that reason.
And I do it because the last thing I want is to get a takedown notice saying, well, you used that clip, or because of the fact that we bash movies.
Yeah.
The last thing I want is for any of these cocksuckers to go ahead and call us up and say, oh, you can't say that about my movie. I'm not a little bit worried about Paul Feig and Ghostbusters when we tear that thing apart, because he's done that to other people.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
I look forward to that.
John deserves the freedom to speak about Michael Fassbender's penis all he wants.
It is.
This is the America I want to live in.
Just beads of sweat just running down that thunderous hog.
But anyway, like that's
Not
just
that I was looking, or I paused.
you obviously weren't
Or
making
rewound.
eggs with it.
Wow, what is this? What is it, 1995?
Oh, be kind, rewind.
But yeah, I feel that this
And-
is just gonna
And
cut
for
down
me
on
too,
fan films,
I
you
know so many people who are artists of all kinds that have a quote unquote real job. You know,
Yeah.
you put in that grind for 8 hours for somebody else. You want to do something for yourself, and
You
just
have
to
to
be
have some
limited
release.
by that, like I just think that that's gross. Like it's just a bunch of out of touch, clueless humans making rules that affect the rest of us when they don't understand what it's really like to put in the grind and then want to do your
They're
own
so
art on the
far
side.
removed from the creative process. I mean,
It's
we've
unreal.
talked about all these movies that have come out of corporations like this, and what's the one thing we could say is that there absolutely is no creativity put into any of these things anymore. So
Well, at the end of the day, they're worried that these, and this is kind of shameless how easy this is, that these films might be better than their originals or their sequels. This might be a better sequel than what they
Boom.
produce. Speaking
Boom.
of sequels,
speaking of sequels,
boy, that was just like a hot knife.
we kind of gave it to you.
Hot knife into
A hot
butter.
knife into butter right there.
You painted a tableau for us, my friend. All
So
right,
sequels.
so sequels. So we kind of wanted to have a discussion on, kind of the phenomenon of the sequel. Now, we're not talking about anything that would be considered like a remake or a reboot or anything like that.
The line gets
could come
blurred
across
nowadays,
that, yeah.
though.
Yeah, it has. But based on our age, I have a feeling like we're going to be like digging into the 80s and 90s for most of our examples. So where do you guys want to start? Do you
Well,
want to start
I
with
mean,
what worked? What
Obviously,
didn't?
we're doing this kind of after we saw Independence Day regurgitation and kind of made us think like perhaps we should take a look at sequels in general. Last week we got to talk to Johnny, but now we wanted to kind of jump into there. So well, the key problem with sequels in general, I think, is that they're kind of a catch-22.
Yeah.
And I kind of blame the audience for that because they claim they don't want the same thing, but they do. And if they get the same movie again, they complain, it's just the same movie over again.
Yep.
Now, some movies are pretty bad about that. But if they go completely different from the original film, they bitch about that. So sequels are kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's only a handful of times that they've worked, and only a very, very small handful of times that they have actually succeeded the original film.
Well, I guess I would say, what do you think is the purpose of the sequel? Like, I think that's
money?
well. I mean, just
There's a few reasons.
in the larger context, besides the money, obviously, that's the business side. What is the absolute purpose of a sequel?
I mean, if you feel like you have more story to tell, I guess, right?
Well, there's a couple things. There's the serialized movie, like Batman has hundreds of stories to tell, and
Right.
Batman, Spider-Man, those kind of movies will be rebooted 1,000 times and make as many sequels until they stop being profitable and then reboot again. There is more story to tell. It just wasn't enough, for one film to be able to tell it. Or, there's the cynical bad part where it's we can make more money off of this.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the ugly side of it.
I always viewed sequels as the starting and continuing another chapter in that character or that property.
And I think
That's the way I always viewed it as.
it's a little tricky too, because I mean, there's also some films that always intended to have sequels.
Yeah.
Like the Star Wars trilogy was designed as a
Yes.
trilogy, and I'm talking New Hope, Empire, and Jedi.
Yes, absolutely.
That was intended to be a trilogy, so I feel like that actually is exempt from this sequel discussion because it was built as one story.
Well, those are two
Well-
types of sequels. That one wasn't necessarily done for more money, more or less. It ended up becoming that. But I mean, Lucas has said, he's like, yeah, I built this from the ground up to be 3 movies.
Yeah, I mean, he had the story in its length,
Yeah.
so he just didn't know. I mean, and it's just so funny to me to think that, like, Star Wars was such a gamble, and they didn't realize it was going to make, like, filthy, dirty, bitching money. But, like,
Filthy,
the first,
dirty, bitching money.
You're welcome. But the first
That's my favorite
one,
Pink song.
they weren't sure what the fuck it was going to do.
No.
Like, they had no idea. And I mean, the fact that it was an absolute blowout success, like, no one really saw that coming. But regardless of that, Lucas had the story in 3 parts and always intended for it to be as such.
Right.
Well, it's funny you should say that because a lot of people do consider Empire Strikes Back to be a superior sequel.
Same
to
with
A New
Godfather Part 2.
Hope. Godfather Part 2 is a better film.
You are correct. So, I
But
mean,
that's kind of like those types of movies. They kind of are quote unquote successful sequels.
yeah.
They take what worked, because the way I always viewed a successful sequel is you take what works in the first movie. You don't try to recreate the wheel. No. That's the worst thing you can do, is try to recreate the wheel. Okay, you got it right the first time. Okay,
Keep what's good.
you keep what works, and then all you do is you expand upon it. I view watching a sequel I shouldn't see two completely different worlds. That was one of my biggest criticisms with Batman Returns, and I know that part of that was because the production designer on Batman on Batman had passed away. He had killed himself. Anton Fursten. He was the guy who created the bizarre Gotham City from the first Batman movie.
Oh, okay.
If you work with John Peters, you'll kill yourself eventually.
I don't think it was that. But that's kind of why when you watch Batman Returns,
they
you
are
see
very
something that is
different visually.
completely different.
Same tone though, I would say.
No,
between the
not
two
really.
films. Well,
I don't think it was the same tone.
same moody kind of.
It was
feel. It's the
moody,
same
but I
Burton
don't-
kind of feel.
Right, but
at
I
least
mean-
it had that same.
At least they were
Burton
joined
kind
by
of,
a
yeah.
director. I mean, like the same director did both, so at least there
Right,
was some.
but I mean,
element
I
there.
guess for me, Batman '89 kind of had a more film noir feel to it, more or less than
True.
Returns did. Returns felt like it was,
Gritty
Tim
art
Burton's
film
wet
on $1
dream.
million budget. Yeah.
No, Tim Burton's, masturbatory fantasy. Like that's honestly what I felt I was watching.
Which is weird because if you asked me for like a single word to describe Batman Returns, I would describe it
masturbatory
as
fantasy.
No, I was going to go with bleak. I was going to go with it's a very bleak film.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what, his masturbatory fantasies are.
Masturbatory. But, well, if you want to talk about sequels going a completely different route with tone, then there was Batman Forever because, parents...
Oh, they got
all
scared.
pissed off. Yeah, they got scared, and that movie is so radically different that if you somehow lived under a rock and you had no idea, and you were just like, I'm going to rent the original Batman films, and you watched the first one and the second one, so it's a little darker and a little weirder, but it still seems in the same universe, and then you watch Batman Forever... What
like-
the hell?
Fun story. So I didn't see Batman Forever until I was an adult.
Holy shit.
I saw it maybe a couple months ago.
I made you
I'm
watch
so
it.
sorry.
And it was amazing because I didn't have that childlike justification. I feel like when you're a kid, you're more apt to accept things without question. And just the entire time, I just was waiting for it to be over or to get better or both.
Did you watch Batman and Robin?
See, and when I was little, I liked that when I was a little kid, and of course I grew out of it because it's a terrible fucking movie. But I mean, when I saw Batman Forever, I was like, what's going on?
See, when I was a kid, Batman Forever, I was able to accept that. As an adult, as a young adult, that's when I started to be like, okay, fuck this shit. and honestly, because you watch Batman Forever, and you're like, okay, it's a little different, but it's still Batman, and I kind of get it. And Riddler's funny, and
Right, because you're like a kid.
you're like a kid. I mean, I had the fucking Genesis video game that was hard as fuck.
Oh, you mean Mortal Kombat with Batman?
Yes, it was terrible.
game engine
It
as
was
Mortal Kombat.
terrible. Okay, and I never could beat that game. It was just the most.
No.
There was no
No.
save point. Okay.
I could almost never get past the bomb part of the circus.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, God damn it.
Yeah.
Fellas, your nerdish.
Okay. But the point is that I could kind of accept Batman Forever, and it wasn't until I saw Batman and Robin 2 years later.
You mean
And
when
you're
Schumacher
just-
burned
Yes.
and got creative control?
And you're just like I didn't even see it in theaters. I bought it on VHS because I'm like, oh, it's Batman. I didn't get a chance to see it.
Poor Brian.
And then I watched it. I'm just like, oh my God, what the fuck happened?
Right?
Well, I mean, too, that movie is so cynical. It's a giant toy commercial, and you could somebody could say that about every one of those movies, but that one,
What?
they
There's no
changed-
need to change the suits midstream.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the entire Gotham's going to be covered in ice. The entire,
I mean,
all
Brian,
of Gotham's
you
going to be
can-
covered in ice, and they're like, let's go change our bat outfits so we can sell more.
So that it's polar. They were
Well-
actually called the polar suits.
Were you guys mad about the bat nipples? Is that where this is coming from?
I didn't really give two shits about that.
Hey, I wanted them to go full tilt. I want to see a big rubber bat dick, with furry
With some-
bat balls. And then I wanted Robin's to be a little bigger and be like, yeah, deal with it, Batman.
Chicks dig the big dick. That's what you want him to say.
I may be your partner in crime, but I lead in the
If
bedroom.
it was anatomically correct, they'd have those hideous red lipstick weird bird dicks.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry, what part of bats have bird dicks?
This is why I got kicked out of the Boy Scouts.
You know bats are mammals, right? Are we clear on this?
No, nuh-uh.
Nuh-uh.
Only dolphins are mammals. Everything else is a bird.
Everything has a bird dick, apparently.
Apparently, and I'm not sure that bird dicks are red. I think you're thinking of dogs.
Like dogs have that shit
Robins.
going on.
Yeah, they're red. So
John, did you pass 8th grade science?
pass first grade science?
But the whole point is like the whole tone change.
Well,
But
I mean,
that's-
again, and we see like someone at the helm of the project has changed hands. It changes over time, and then
But
you
even
know,
with Star Wars, you had people who were different at the helm, and you still
that's what made Star Wars work.
You still
I
kept
think.
the
I mean,
theme.
Well,
I
they
think
knew that the people would riot, I feel.
I think the best thing that happened to Empire Strikes Back was the fact that George Lucas did not direct it.
Clearly, the prequels kind of can tell us that.
Oh, dude. That
Man can't direct.
He cannot. He can't really talk to other humans. Like I always enjoy thinking about the George Lucas style of of directing.
Jar Jar, he's going to be the sole purpose in this movie.
He's funnier than any other character we've had before. So Jar Jar is what it takes to make this film work.
Jar Jar, everything's hinging on him.
Well, isn't his
He
only...
actually said that. Jar Jar, everything's hinging on him.
Yeah, he thought it was the Yoda of that.
Isn't his only direction to actors ever do it again but faster?
Well, yeah. Then
Did he actually say
sit down
that?
and drink his coffee?
Oh, seriously, I think that's like his only. He's famed. And listeners, if you guys know this, like without a doubt, let us know. Reach out on the social medias. But he only
Reach out
has
and
like
touch us.
a single.
In our bird.
Do it again, but faster.
Yeah, he only has a single direction. It's something really generic, like do it again but faster.
Go ahead and act with Andy Serkis in a blue suit.
Well,
Seriously.
is it fair to say that sequels at work are from filmmakers want to follow up their films, and then there are the sequels that fail are the ones the studio wants made?
Well,
Is that
what
the
are you saying
simplest
here?
way to
What
say?
basically what you're saying is when there's a vision for that second
Yeah.
film. That's what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? Like I agree with that.
Here's a very popular. People say, "Oh, what's better than the original?" Terminator 2.
Terminator 2
Terminator
is
2
a
beats the
great
shit out of the
movie and
original.
beats the first one. You are correct.
The thing is, by the way, it's the weather's bad outside, so if you hear thunder, we didn't make like a very dastardly point. That's just the weather.
No, it's just the
disagree
weather.
with it.
Though I think it's because John's always plotting.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I love the original Terminator, but it's a B chase movie.
It was designed to be a B chase movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And it worked, and it did a lot of things that we hadn't seen before,
Then it became, beloved. James Cameron improved his skills. Arnold became the biggest action star in the world, and they said, why don't we, kind of expand upon this and make it a lot more thoughtful and intelligent and character driven? And then what happens when they go to make the third one? The studio wanted to make it so they could just start a whole new franchise of Terminator War movies, and the third one is a giant piece of crap.
It is.
Because Cameron
I would
wasn't
say
involved,
though,
nobody cared.
that it's probably the least giant piece of crap out of all of the sequels that have come
Oh,
after
you guys
it.
didn't like Genesis?
Genesis can suck it.
Genesis can
What
suck
number
it.
was Genesis?
Well,
Genesis
it's
was number
remembering.
5.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I
5.
thought.
Yeah, it was 5.
You guys didn't like Genesis?
No, you like Genesis?
I don't remember if I was sober or not, but I remember liking
I like Sega
it.
Genesis.
I mean, I will say I'm very good at separating myself from I liked this movie or I thought this movie was good. I did not think it was good, but I still enjoyed it.
I did enjoy it.
I'm sorry.
I did not either.
Well, I mean, it took a crap on y'all.
Well, I mean, it was a
sequel.
sequel / reboot. Because everything they did in that movie was basically say, hey, you know all the fun stuff you love from the previous movies? We're basically going to take a giant shit on it and say it doesn't exist anymore. Like, that's my problem. Is they pulled a time travel on you.
Yeah, I kind of did that.
Well, the problem too is that when they clearly end a movie and the studio says, "Well, fuck you. There's more money here."
Oh,
They
yeah.
threw the chip in. They threw the arm in. Arnold's like,
The
"That's
second
one
should have been
more chip."
it.
And
That
he
should have
killed
ended
himself.
it right
Yep.
there.
It's over.
That's it.
The war has been stopped. However, though, you could say, in the first one when Michael Baine's in the interrogation room and says, "We both went back, and then the time travel, vortex was blown up." How did they send 2 more Terminators back?
That's logic.
Oh, no, I've gone cross-eyed.
So I guess I could say, oh, how dare they make another sequel when they ended in Terminator 2? They technically ended it in Terminator 1. So
Technically, but here's the thing. That's kind of a small piece that only like super fans would get. Most people wouldn't even go ahead and pick up on that. I didn't even pick up on that.
That's true.
Okay, so like I think that's forgivable you could say that they didn't think that they were going to make a sequel, and they didn't think. That's why it took them like what was it, like almost 10 years before they made?
It was a really long time.
Yeah.
And that's something that always is strange to me as well, because I think when you make sequels with like a huge gap between the original and the next installment, I just think something gets lost, because I think if anything, films are very much a product of their time, and something that works even in 2002, it doesn't work when you revisit it again. I mean, a great example of that is Anchorman. The second Anchorman
my God.
was a fucking piece of shit. That was the worst movie.
The problem with that is when you fall into that idea of, we'll do the sequel, we're going to do the exact same movie, but everything's going to be times 10.
Yes.
And
You look
that
at
was the
Ace Ventura and Ace Ventura 2. Now, Ace Ventura is already an obnoxious character, but if you really do watch Ace Ventura, like, he's reeled in.
He's still a pet detective. He does detective work.
Yeah, and he's smart, and he knows when to turn it off in that movie. In the sequel, he's a cartoon version of himself from the first film. And it's
true.
almost unwatchable. And now, I will say, when
find
Nature
it
Calls has
funny.
its moments. It does have its funny
No,
moments.
there are some moments. His whole thing with the security guy that he does over and over again.
Oh, enjoyable.
And the one of my personal favorite lines from that movie is when he's at the constable's party and he sees the Uncle Pennybags guy.
Do not pass out. Do not buy $500.
He's just like shaking him. And he's like, okay, you got me there.
That's amazing.
So, but the thing though is, there's not much to that movie other than those little quips here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like nowadays, those sequels they don't even try. It's all about universe building now. The best example of that, for me at least, is Age of Ultron. I love the first Avengers. I really did.
I liked it too.
You know?
I thought it was a very competent telling.
And
of
then
a
you watch
great
Age of
story.
Ultron, and it's suddenly like Joss Whedon had a checklist that Marvel and Disney had given him,
Yeah,
and
right?
said, "Hey, you know what? You've got to mention this. You've got to mention that. You've got to mention this.
Right? I felt
And-
like he had no control.
Well,
Joss
he even
Whedon.
said he didn't have any control. He said like he was burnt out
He
because
almost
of
had a
Age of
nervous
Ultron.
breakdown.
Well, there were a lot of things in that movie, too, that I just felt were a little too Whedon. And I think that sometimes happens when, okay, the first movie was successful. We're going to give you, like, a little more control. And you don't want to stifle, the filmmaker in their vision, too much. But you got to wrangle them in a little bit, like George Lucas.
Or Tim
original.
Burton. He didn't have a control.
And as soon as
on
Burton
it.
got control in Batman Returns, or Whedon got it in,
You had a
Ultron,
Tim
and
Burton masturbatory fantasy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like everything that they might have done for Age of Ultron when they, when it would have been smart to kind of reel back, Joss Whedonisms, as they're known, his Whedonisms should have been kind of scaled back a bit so that every character didn't talk just like him or just like Buffy.
No. And
but-
honestly,
but
like
they didn't,
for me, I felt, and I don't know if you guys saw it yet, but I felt that the perfect sequel to Avengers was Civil War.
Interesting.
I don't know if did you guys see it yet? No, not yet. No.
We really wanted to, and to that, I would say that I really liked Captain America. I can't believe how much I ended up liking that movie.
Right.
I didn't see it in the theater, but when I the night before we went to see the second, Captain America, I was like, I don't want to just be ass lost in this movie. So I rented the first one. And I really, really liked it. And then the second one was really, really good too. So, I mean,
It's
I
the
think
Russo brothers.
it
That's
can be
what it's
done.
them.
I think it's even in this age, where we are kind of really inundated, especially with Marvel. We were given a lot of movies thrown at us, where some are total duds at Thor. But,
Oh, come on. I liked Thor.
did you? I heard it was bad. I didn't see it.
Which
I just
one are you
heard it was
talking about?
bad.
Are you talking about original Thor or are we talking about the Dark World?
Talking about the Deuce.
Okay, yeah, the Dark World
Deuce
was
is
kind of
loose.
shitty.
That's what I heard. Heard it was terrible. But I thought that, the second installment of Captain America was really good. So
Yeah.
it's not like it can't be done, even when we have these characters kind of like shoved down our throat all the time. But
Right.
an interesting, I think, kind of flip side of that coin is Iron Man. I feel like they've had like very shaky touch and go kind of
It's
success.
been touch and go.
With the films. Because tell me your thoughts, John, on the Iron Man movies. I can't remember where you stand on all of them.
Oh, I thought the first Iron Man movie was a simple movie for simple people. The sequel was god awful, and the third one was actually fairly good. Now, once again, we mentioned this.
I'm kind of in the meh category of that.
This has been Blunt Opinions with John.
Hey, you asked. No, now, once again, we mentioned this on previous episodes of this podcast. While being a avid comic book fan, did not read Iron Man, so the Mandarin not really being the Mandarin didn't bother me because I barely knew who the Mandarin was. So I understand rabid Iron Man fans being super pissed off at Iron Man 3, but not knowing that much going into it, I didn't mind. So
I never read Iron Man as well, but I knew enough to know that the Mandarin was basically the Joker for Iron Man. Like, that's pretty much what it is. And I can understand being pissed off because, let's say we were watching a Batman movie and suddenly the Joker is not the Joker. He's just some business guy who goes by the Monkey or Joker. I think I'd be rioting at that point. But for me, I thought that the first Iron Man was great. I thought it was
I liked the first one too.
I really liked it. I thought it had a great feel to it, and it really, like, that Robert Downey Jr. pretty much is Tony Stark.
He's pretty great, actually.
Okay,
he doesn't have to act.
No, well, it's the same thing with Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson doesn't have to fucking act. Okay, he just goes in there and says, "I'm Jack Nicholson."
He just goes in front of a camera, acts like an asshole, and everyone thinks it's brilliant.
Yes, but it's the same thing. Robert Downey Jr. If you look at, Tony Stark's characteristics in the comic books, they match almost perfectly. Tony Stark is an alcoholic. Okay, that's his thing. He's a substance abuser.
Yeah.
Okay? Robert Downey Jr. was a substance abuser.
Bingo.
Okay?
Yeah.
And they pretty much fit. That's why it's been so difficult for people to say, hey, maybe one of these days, Robert Downey Jr. might not be Tony Stark anymore.
I mean, because it's working, and I think that he's a great element of what makes Iron Man work. But I think what happens, especially, with what you guys were talking about with world building, so we have, Thor and Captain America and Iron Man movies, and then the Avengers. What happens, I think, is when they overlap too much. Mm-hmm. The second Iron Man movie just felt like a long trailer with Dr. Pepper in it for, the fucking Avengers movie.
Dr. Pepper?
It was so commercialized. Every single part of it was in my face. I mean, they were selling everything from soda to Reese's cups.
Well, this is
for Iron Man 2 because
I
it just was
didn't mind Iron Man 2.
But it felt like a big prelude to the Avengers.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's the problem with sequels is when they're a vehicle for something else.
This is this is for our and it's coming, folks, our Marvel Cinematic Universe episode. But all these movies are simply sequels or previews for the next film.
Yeah,
every last one of them are. And that's why Edgar Wright walked out of Ant-Man, because he didn't want it to just be a Marvel Cinematic Universe commercial for the next movie. And they said no, and he said goodbye.
Well, and the thing too is really saying, okay, so does that mean that when we get Infinity Wars Part 1 and 2, is that the real Marvel movie that we've all been waiting for?
I feel we always say
is that.
But
I mean, is that what it's going to be?
It's interesting that we, all these movies now are planned out as franchises. And it wasn't that way when we were kids. They killed off the Joker. In the Ninja Turtles, they killed off the Shredder.
And then brought him back, and then he died again.
Yeah, and then he died again. They weren't planning that. They were going to make a movie, tell a story, and maybe if it makes enough money, we'll figure it out. Now, granted, say for the '89 Batman, this was a shot in the dark. Like Superman worked, but maybe this won't.
No one knew if
Nobody
Batman
knew it
No,
would be
it was a
successful. So
gamble.
they weren't thinking sequels,
Yeah,
but
just like Star Wars, it was a gamble.
But the idea to kill the Joker off was still a little ballsy, because you'd think like, well, we'd probably want him for 3 or 4 or 8 sequels.
I don't think they could afford him. I think that's what it came down to. I think Jack Nicholson got such a sweetheart deal.
Oh
yeah.
The man's still making money off of anything
he's
Batman.
making so much money though. Like it's
Batman
not even
v
just
Superman,
like,
he gets a cut of it. Okay, like that's
dirty money.
Why do you
like,
think he doesn't have to work anymore? Okay, that's
filthy
it.
Fucking money. But like, I think it's interesting. You bring up the word franchise because where I would argue that Star Wars is a trilogy and there are movies that have sequels. I wonder if Back to the Future is the first franchise because they intended to make more films.
They didn't.
They didn't intend to. No.
Here. Okay, so here's what happened. The first one ends, and while it seemed like it was a sequel bait ending, it was supposed to be preposterous, because why would you go in the future to fix something? It doesn't make any sense. It was just silly. And the movie ends. It makes a crap ton of money. They say, hey, let's make a sequel. Zemeckis wasn't even really feeling it, but they cha-ching talked him into it. Him and Gale to write some sequels. Although Bob Gale mostly wrote the sequels.
They did two.
Yeah,
at the same time.
At the same time, Zemeckis only kind of like looked over what Gale had to write, which maybe was a mistake. Because while I like the second and third one, they don't stand a candle to the first one. And then when the VHS copy of Back to the Future came out, they slapped on "to be continued." And when I was a little kid, I thought it always was intended to be a trilogy, because
I didn't know that.
Fucking lied to us.
Right. Well, I mean, but what I meant, and it's fine. You made a lot of really good points and kind of explained the anatomy of the films and everything, and that's appreciated. What I meant is that they did film the second and the third at the same time, so they knew they were making both of those films at once. I didn't mean from first to second. I meant second and third being filmed at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that might have been. I think that was the first time that they had filmed two movies at the same time.
Is it fair to say that it could be the first franchise for that reason? Because it was intended, 2 and 3 were intended to be back to back.
Yeah, I mean the only other time you had that sort of thing done, though, previous to that was back in the Universal Monster days, when they would make Spanish language versions of the same movie.
Oh,
like
interesting.
There's actually a copy of Dracula from 1931. What they would do is during the daytime, the English language cast, so Bela Lugosi, Todd Browning, all of them, they would shoot their movie, and then at night they would let the Spanish language actors and Spanish language director and all of that crew use the same sets, the same costumes,
interesting,
but shoot an entirely different movie. And it was the same basic script,
right, but just adapted.
But it was just done differently. And people have actually said that the Spanish language version of Dracula from 1931 actually is better than the Bela Lugosi version.
I buy
because they actually did camera moves and visual effects and things that Todd Browning, being a theatrical director,
right,
didn't do.
Yeah.
And that's why you watch Dracula and you're just like, why does it look like I'm watching a play?
Because you are.
Because you are.
Interesting. Now, I mean, that created a different beast, so that would be a good example of something being filmed, similarly.
Right.
But just the way that the shooting schedule was for this, I just wonder, is it the first franchise? Because we throw that word around a lot now because they're everywhere now.
I mean, you also have like the Dirty Harry movies that came out too in the 70s. I mean, that was technically considered a franchise too.
Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
The Death Wish films.
And you even have you even have the horror movies have been franchised up to shit. I mean, you had like 7 Jasons and 7 or 8 Freddys, and
that's very true.
So, but I think the thing though is what you're saying is that those movies weren't filmed back to back, like they weren't filmed at the same exact time.
Right, and I'm not saying like I necessarily know the hallmarks of what makes a franchise, especially in the earlier days, because it was something that we didn't quite, have that word for, in that sense. But I just think it's interesting. I mean, we've talked about a ton of movies, where sometimes the sequel worked and sometimes the sequel didn't, and I just wonder if it makes a difference if they know it was going to exist ahead of time.
Well, it's interesting. It makes me think of Halloween. Talking about horror movies. And, they made the first one, and Carpenter always wanted this to be kind of a like a serializing where there's a different story. It takes place on Halloween every movie, and they said, oh hey, you kind of left the first one open ended. The audience kind of wants Michael Myers again. He says, no, you assholes, I didn't leave it open ended. He disappears in a metaphorical sense because he is the boogeyman. He is fear. He is, and that's why you're hearing his breathing all through the house. Yeah. So they're like, oh, but no, he's gone. So well, here's what I'll do. I'll make the sequel and I'll kill him. And then we'll get to make,
Season of the Witch.
Yeah, Season of the Witch, which it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
It's bad.
It could be worse.
Meh.
But,
no, you know what? It would be good if they didn't slap Halloween on the front of it. That would be if they just call it Season of the Witch, and there was no ties to Halloween,
But
it would be fine.
But that was the plan, was to create a different story each time. But then the audience said, we want Michael, and that was it. And then Halloween 4 came out, and bada bing, look who's back.
In all fairness, you have to understand, too, that Halloween Season of the Witch came out at the same time as movies like Jason and Freddy were coming out. So audiences were used to having that one killer that, you always saw all the time.
Villain.
So,
Totally.
and I mean, Halloween was the first one. They were the first ones to do the slasher movie. They pretty much wrote the book on it. So I can understand why Carpenter would be like, I don't want to do that because that's not my original vision. But at the same time, you're existing in a atmosphere where more and more movies are coming out like that,
And it's a shame, too, because it's one of those things where the audience dictates, sometimes these sequels being made. With the Friday the 13th movies, they made the same movie like 12 times.
Yes, they did.
And it's because they cost less and less each time and made more and more. And the studio, of course the studio is going to do it. They're there to make money. And it's like, if this costs, $10.96 to make and it makes $25 million, it's like, okay, let's bring Jason back. Okay, now he's up from the bottom of the lake. Now we're digging up his grave. No matter how
Spoiler
preposterous.
alert, goddamn.
But, okay, have we ever really cared about spoilers?
No,
Well,
fuck all y'all.
Here's a spoiler. Jason goes after a bunch of teenagers and kills them, and then you say, hey, isn't that guy from that thing? And then he dies. And
That's
then
pretty much
the lone
it.
girl survives, and Jason gets put in a place where they kind of forget about his body until he can rise again for the next movie.
Okay, then.
There you go.
Nailed it.
And then later down the line, you basically have a grudge match between Freddy Krueger and Jason in which basically no one wins.
Including all of the movie ticket buyers.
Robert-
Yes, I know, because I was one of them.
Oh, well.
I was there.
I was there. I was like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah. Freddy, Jason, neck and neck, battling? Yeah. My money's on Freddy. And you watch and you're just like, what?
I wish I was dead.
Well, somebody won. Robert Englund's bank account won.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I feel like we covered a lot of films. I think that for me, I think that the clarity that I needed was just like, I think if the director or whoever's behind the project of a sequel, if they do have a true vision, I think that's usually better for everyone. And if it's just for business, monetary reasons, then usually it doesn't go very well.
Well, here's the interesting one we have not brought up yet that I think is fascinating, that the fact that it worked. Gremlins 2.
I love Gremlins 2.
I do too, but the entire
A lot of
movie-
people hate Gremlins 2.
It's
And
a
it's the same with
satire of the
Ghostbusters
original.
2 as well.
Oh,
I
I
love
like Ghostbusters
Ghostbusters
2
2.
as well.
A lot of people hate it.
Well, okay, so those are very different because like Gremlins 2 is in many ways just a satire of the original film,
Yep.
and they just go crazy,
And it works.
and it works. Which a lot of people, it's too different from the original. And that one's incredibly different from the original, but people love it anyways. Yeah, Ghostbusters 2 is the example of the other end where it's let's make Ghostbusters again, and slap a number 2 on it. It goes with doing the peace
But
sign.
I loved
And-
Ghostbusters 2.
I like it too.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
when you have those people behind the film, when you have Harold Ramis and Aykroyd,
R.I.P. Harold
writing,
Ramis.
and Ivan Reitman directing, like it's going to succeed, even if it is
It's hard to fuck that up.
basically, yeah, it doesn't stand up to the original, but what does?
No, it
but it's still good.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw a meme today that there was a chick in the Slimer outfit. Did you guys know that? That the Slimer was played by a chick?
Oh, I
I
didn't
saw a
know
meme
that.
about that today. I thought it was pretty cool.
Kind of not surprised.
See?
all.
Oh.
He had a grace, a natural grace that only women can portray.
Oh, God.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but like for me, I mean, Elaine, you mentioned just directors having a vision. I think that's important to a point because I've seen directors have visions that go wrong. Tim Burton's
sure.
Batman Returns. That's Tim Burton's vision. Okay, that was his
Take
vision.
That from him.
I mean, the Warner Brothers told him, "Hey, you made us a shit ton of money with Batman. We're gonna give you everything. You don't have to worry about the comic books. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff."
Meanwhile,
So I think-
he's sitting on the floor in the corner playing with a dead bird and goes,
Right.
really?
Right. But I think that having a vision is part of it. I think the other part of it is making a movie that exists within the same world and does the job of pushing the characters forward.
Yeah.
That there needs to be an evolution
I could see that.
of those characters. The reason why that we love movies like Godfather Part 2, for example, is that we're seeing the progression of Michael Corleone going from, in the first movie, he's this wide-eyed kid who happens to be in a family full of mobsters who are murdering people, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with that. And the arc of the whole movie is that he's forced to basically be part of that. And at the end of it, you find that he's now the Don. Part 2 basically adds more progression to that. It's how deep does Michael have to go to become the gangster that his father is? Okay? That's the whole arc of it. Is you see him, he's like, he has the allure of the businessman. Okay? That's the whole thing. It's a dichotomy. And that's why they're splitting back and forth between Vito Corleone's rise and Michael's rise. Because you basically reach his prime, and then at apex with him killing his brother. And that's then leads to Part 3, which honestly is the worst of all of them.
But I sort of like it's.
I
not
can see
great.
it. No, it's not
a B-
great.
movie, but I still,
It's a B- movie because they're no longer focusing on Michael's story. It's now become, oh well, he's kind of on his way out, and he's got regrets, and he's kind of turned it over to Andy Garcia's character.
Well, is the question, is that a story that needs to be told? Haven't we seen Michael Corleone's story? Do we need to see him at the end of his life, having bad gas and bunions, saying, I shouldn't have been such a dick? Do we need to tell that story?
No, he didn't. And here's the thing. That particular movie was done because Francis Ford Coppola needed money. That's the reason. He blew all of his money on Apocalypse Now. He needed money. And it was going broke. American Zoetrope was going completely fucking broke. They needed money, so they came to, I think it was, it might have been Paramount. But it was Columbia, I believe. They came to him and said, we'll give you a shit ton of money to go ahead and make a third Godfather, even though he'd said he didn't want to make a third Godfather. Godfather Part 2 was supposed to be the last movie. He needed money, so he did it. And then he also did Dracula around the next year, and that's actually what saved the studio, was Dracula.
Wow. No kidding.
Even with Keanu Reeves and Winona
Even with
Ryder.
Keanu Reeves, it made a shit ton of money, and it actually saved it. And it also gave us, digital editing, too, because that movie was the first one to be digitally edited.
We should do that movie sometime, though, because it's so fucking...
I love Dracula. I love that particular movie.
Speaking of sequels that
But I just think that there needs to be some type of
absolutely
world continuation.
Yeah, and I would agree with
continual
that,
arc.
absolutely.
It can't just be Vision.
And here's where I have a problem with world continuation, and here's where I lose half of our listenership. I don't like Aliens. There, I said it.
I haven't seen either one. Brian, I'm counting on you to tell me what I need to think.
Really?
Right, oh, he's so mad.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, he's so mad.
It's Cameron Fluff, and I don't like that they took... Hear me out!
Oh my
Shit,
God.
so serious.
Is that they took Ridley Scott's brilliant vision of a psychological horror movie, well-paced, and,
Cameronized it.
Yeah, and then Cameron, where I think Gremlins 2 succeeds, I don't like that all of a sudden let's turn it into a giant action movie. Where now it's tons of aliens, and there's machine guns, and there's no tension or horror or anything that was built in that first movie. It just completely just diverges too much, from my opinion, in the first, because I think the first one's a masterpiece, and I think the second one's a machine gun-ridden fluff film.
Okay. For me, I like Aliens. Honestly, I like it less than the original. I agree with you, okay, in that regard. The original is superior. There's nothing existed like that before. It's like Night of the Living Dead, okay? Nothing existed like that before George Romero went ahead in Advent City and made a movie, okay? So I get where you're coming from.
We love you, George. By the way, if you want us to interview you on the show...
Yes,
Oh
please.
my God, George, holla at your girl.
Please.
I'll try to hide my erection.
We want him to be on the show. Be good.
But the point is that what I see with Aliens is more of the same way that George Romero would reflect the time that he's making his movies. Aliens came out in 1986. amongst all of the Cold War bullshit and all the militarization of the Reagan 80s and all that bullshit. So what type of movie do you think you're going to get? You're going to get something that is machine guns, us versus them, type of mentality. And on top of that, I will give you this. Cameron kind of injected that whole, motherly vibe into it and kind of weakened Ellen Ripley's character, in my opinion, with that second one.
And at least it wasn't the exact same. At least they didn't Home Alone it.
No, but at the same time, it's like one of the things that a lot of people say is that, Alien is kind of a landmark film because it's really the first time that the female in the cast is the hero. You didn't really have that at the time. 1979, you didn't have those types of movies like that.
No. And Sigourney Weaver was such
and
a
Sigourney
great
Weaver
choice.
was a
She's
fucking badass.
So great.
And she goes from being just the co-pilot to, okay, now she's the one who's come up with the plans. She goes back, saves the cat, which I would have done. But it's a landmark film in that it kind of, I guess you could say, empowers women and no longer just makes them as a damsel in distress. With Aliens, they kind of weaken that. And they kind of turn it back on its head of, oh, she's more of a motherly figure. And then she's going to go ahead and battle the Queen because the Queen's trying to go after Newt and all this shit. So, I mean, I can get that, but I still love Aliens. I mean, as a action movie, it's great. It's got all the hallmarks of it. And it's got a lot of great one-liners in it. Do I like it more than the original? Hell no. So I'll agree with you on that one. But I don't hate it.
Perhaps hate is a strong word.
I think hate's a strong word.
I mean,
I kind of
think you maybe like
Cameron, anyways, because he made two of what I think are the most garbage movies of all time, in Avatar and Titanic.
Yeah, those are pretty bad.
And then there's.
why didn't Titanic have a sequel?
We're gonna go back to Titanic.
Guys, it actually did. Titanic 2 does exist.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, it has no connection to
No, it doesn't.
It totally does.
No, it doesn't.
Maybe we'll add it to
Google
the
it.
pantheon of other
Is it seriously a movie?
It's called Titanic.
Yeah,
2.
and it's not like a porn or anything.
The ship isn't the only thing going down.
It's not like a porn. I was going to say, usually that's the only way you get sequels to movies like that, where there's a definitive ending. The ship sunk.
Jack, I'm wet, but we're not even in the water yet.
My hard-on will go on. I could do this all day, bitches.
I think that honestly should be one episode that we do is, I guess you could say reimaginings from a pornography standpoint of classic films.
I don't think anything would make you happier, John.
Oh, we should do a whole episode dedicated to the best porn parodies
Edward
of
Penis
feature
Hands,
films.
like Edward Penis Hands,
Oh yes, that's a good one.
A classic, if you will.
or Star Whores.
Snatch Adams.
Yeah.
Foreskin Gump. That's a good one.
You don't know what you've unleashed.
Oh, I know what I've unleashed.
Well, hey guys, I can't wait to do this episode again, exactly the same, but talk about other movies. See what I did there?
My character's gonna have an arc.
There you go. So I think we're going to close out the show with that one. So,
Guys, right before we end, your favorite sequel and go.
Oh God. I don't know.
Well, that guy's not turned on anymore.
oh, Jesus
Brian.
Christ. Why are you putting me in the hot spot like that? Favorite sequel? Ah, shit.
I mean, I pulled Empire Strikes Back out of the running by my own rules, but it is my favorite sequel.
Mine's a tie
Truthfully.
between Terminator 2 and Godfather Part 2.
Ooh.
God almighty. I don't know. Like, I haven't really found any good sequels. For me, and you'll probably laugh at me, I love, just for pure schlock reasons, I love Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare.
Ooh. This is
Yeah.
a safe space, by the way. We would never.
I know,
lie to
but
you.
I'm just like, I love
Where he turns
that
into
movie.
Wile E. Coyote.
Yes. Yes. It has a special place in my heart because that was one of the first Freddy movies I saw. Like, it was
Very
that
nice,
and
very nice.
Freddy.
About the power glove.
Yes, that's the thing. When that movie came out, it was 1990, so I was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was right up my alley. Wasn't the first Freddy movie I saw. The first one I saw was Part 2. Which
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're
Yeah.
so offended.
Yeah.
The one that, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the closeted gay one.
Yes. But here's the thing: when you're like 2 years old, because I saw it on HBO when it was playing. Oh, Thunder's going now. I didn't get any of that because you're 2.
Right.
I just saw like this image of the claws coming up through the sheets, and I'm just like, holy fucking shit, that's awesome. You know? In my 2-year-old mind, I already knew swear words.
It's awesome.
1's great, 3's fairly
3's
decent,
good.
and
I like
New
3.
Nightmare's awesome.
New Nightmare is very good. So anyway, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at Psycho Show. And in fact, here's the thing. Since we're doing a thing on sequels, go ahead and put in on our comment section on our page your favorite sequel.
Yeah, we want to know.
We want to know, because whoever has the best sequel, we'll go ahead and we'll call you out on the show.
Give
and
you a shout.
give you a shout out and that sort of thing. So,
Unless it's RoboCop 3, then you can go fuck yourself.
Rude.
yeah. So thanks. Now we're not gonna get anybody. But if you have
everything.
If you have a favorite movie you'd like for us to review or a question you want to go ahead and throw our way, contact us at cinemapsychoshow@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe to catch us on our next show every Friday. And we will see you
I
then.
think there's something strange in the neighborhood going around. Who are you going to call? Cinema.
Lady Ghostbusters.
Good night.
Good night.